Hi, it's Jake here at Canadian Cutting Edge, and this is the first Sunday in March. And what do I got for you? Blah, 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 blah. Hi, this is Jake, and this is Canadian Cutting Edge. Welcome. And what do I have for you on the first Sunday of the month? Well, I've got two knives. Well, I've got one knife. I'll show you. This is the G7142 and the G714 by Ganzo. So obviously they came out with this one first, Tanto blade, way back early in the G714 series, and then they came out with this one, the G7142. This Ganzo with their later G series and their F series now, if the fourth digit is a 2, it means stonewash. In this case, the fourth digit simply means they made another 714 and they made it slightly different. And in this case, the different is that they made it just with your classic drop point blade. Tanto, drop point, but that's not the only difference. This knife has a number of differences from the average Ganzo knife. So if you're interested at all in something unique, stick around and I'll tell you what's so special about these knives. That's the G714 and the G714-2. One of the things that you'll notice is that it's an unusually thin knife, narrow I should say, all the way from the heel to the tip of the blade. You know, it's a fairly narrow knife. A lot of Ganzo's knives are much thicker from the back of the handle to the belly of the handle. They're much thicker this way. The blades are often much thicker as well, from the spine to the cutting edge as well. But the length is very much the same as most Ganzo knives. So let's go over the specs first, and then I'll tell you what's special about this knife. So the specs, the cutting edge on both of these is 3 3/8 inches from the choil to the tip. That's 8.5 centimeters. The handles are 4.5 inches, which is 11.5 centimeters. When they're open, the full length is 8 inches, 20.2 centimeters. The blade thickness, I measured at the spine just behind the thumb studs. They are 2.8 millimeters thick. That's 0.11 inches. The handle is 1/2 inch thick, and that is 1.25 centimeters. And it's less than an inch thick on average this way as well. The other common thing about this knife is they both have the same type of steel, but that's also a unique thing. G10 handle scales, the only option is black. You've got the pocket clip that you see here. It's a fairly unique pocket clip. It's a little bit odd that they have a pocket clip that has a hole in it, and yet it doesn't line up with the lanyard hole. That's actually one thing I wish they would change. If they ever did rework the engineering on this, just move the pocket clip closer to the end of the handle and move the lanyard hole to line up with that hole there, or put on a different pocket clip. I don't know. I should also mention about the pocket clip, it's nicely rounded, just like their standard pocket clip. Very comfortable, very workable, no hot spots in the hand when you're using the knife or anything. The pocket clip, how it functions is very good, although you've got more than an inch sticking out of your pocket. So like 2.5 centimeters, 3 centimeters sticking out of your pocket. Some people think that's way too much. Other people don't mind. For me, it depends on the occasion, why I'm carrying, what I'm doing that day or whatever. The rest of the screws here I really like because they're flush with the G10, except for the pivot screw. The pivot screw sort of is a bump on the side, but the other screws here, they're just flat with the surface. So that's a really good thing. Another common thing about this knife is they're all open pillar construction. Well, both are open pillar construction. They've got 2 pillars, 2 standoffs. They're just straight pins, nothing fancy, just like the stop pin. In fact, they are the exact same size as the stop pin, so they would be interchangeable. The lanyard hole is large enough for 550 paracord, easily, no problem at all. The G10 has a really fine texture to it. As you can see right there, the texture is really nice. It's grippy enough, and it's not too grippy. It's just a very good texture. Let's talk about what makes these knives unique in Ganzo's corral, if you will. I already mentioned how these knives are long and thin. That's a unique thing. But a couple of the other things that's unique about them is the steel that's used. This is a German steel, BRD 4116. It's a steel that in some ways has been very much compared to 440C, except for it's much more corrosion resistant than 440C. In fact, it was designed for medical use because, you know, in hospitals, they don't like rust on their scalpels and things. So it was a steel that was designed for medical use. Now it is largely used in food preparation use. You know, they make those big wheels for cutting meat and stuff, and they make all sorts of knives with this steel as well. Very commonly used that way. It's a quite tough steel. It keeps an edge quite long, and it's not that hard to sharpen. I've had other knives with this steel. I've not sharpened either one of these. I've stropped them, but that's the only thing I've done with these. I should tell you, I bought this Tanto version, the original 714, over 12 months ago, and I've had the 714-2 for about 3 months. So I've just been waiting for the right time to do a review, and today just seems like the right time to do a review on these knives. Very pointy, both of them. That also means that they're slightly weak at the tip compared to a lot of other Ganzo knives. I shouldn't really phrase it that way. It's not that they're weak. They're just weaker than a lot of the other Ganzo blade shapes that they've made. So you need to be careful with any Tanto, especially if it's a sort of a hyper Tanto. This is like a 45-degree angle, or close to it. And so that makes for a very pointy tip. So that makes it also something you need to respect. Another unique thing about these two knives compared to a lot of other Ganzos is they're both hollow grinds. I've had some people asking me recently about Ganzo knives with hollow grinds, and the list is quite short. The 714 is one of the main ones that has a hollow grind. The hollow grind is about a centimeter deep before it gets to the full thickness of the blade. That centimeter is, close to half an inch, give or take a tiny bit. Both of these knives have a false wedge at the leading edge here, there and there. They both have got decent jimping. I like this jimping. It's not aggressive, and yet it's actually functional. The hollow grind thickness behind the final edge is different between these two. So let's talk about first the Tanto version, because it's a little bit thicker. Just behind the final grind, this is 0.8 millimeters thick. So that's right where my fingernail is right there. That's 0.32 inches. The drop point blade, it's 0.68 millimeters, which is 0.027 inches. So it's a little thinner, a little bit more narrow here, a little bit better for slicing than the Tanto is. Let's talk about the pivot on these knives. Well, these are both liner locks, so they're identical in that way. They both have one phosphor bronze washer and one white nylon washer, unless it's white Teflon, I don't know. And the lockup on them is rock solid on both of them. There's no blade place side to side, up and down. And that's from the factory that way. The Tanto one is the one I got over a year ago, and the reason I didn't review it right away is this. The lockup is a bit late. That's very unusual for a Ganzo to have such late lockup. Most of their knives, all the other liner locks I have from them, the lockup is quite a bit earlier. It's not all the way to the edge of the blade. It still has room to wear over. Certainly there's space before you get to the liner. I'll give you a close-up shot of that. The other one, let's just open it up and take a look. You've got a much earlier lockup. This is very close to exactly what I like to see on a brand new knife. So that looks good. Lockup nice and solid, as I mentioned earlier. The knife is nice and thin, and it feels good in the hand. It's easy to hold. I've got large size hands, and yet there's room left over. So I think anybody with small, medium, large, even extra large size hands is going to find this knife usable, unless you really don't like thin knives. We each have our own preferences. There's nothing saying we all have to like the same thing, right? So, but I think it'll fit adequately for most people. The liners are not skeletonized. I should get you the weight for these knives. Let's try the 714 first. 3.8 ounces, 108 grams. And the other one is 107 grams. Also 3.8 ounces because, you know, it just doesn't round that far. So it's certainly in the class of EDC for just about anybody I've ever met, so you don't really need it to be skeletonized. 3.8 ounces is not too much for anybody that I've met. The Tanto blade I've used longer, and so it's nice and free. Flips open very, very easily, very smoothly. No problem at all. The drop point one also does, but it's just a little bit stickier. Well, stickier is the wrong word. It's just a little bit tighter in the pivot, and that's simply because I haven't done as much of this, you know, to try to get it to wear in. I haven't carried it very much. Let's do some cut tests on these knives. So there's my 4 layers of paracord right there. And one of the things about this paracord that's going to make it a little harder to cut is that the blade is flat. There's no recurve to it. There's no belly to it. And so this is the most difficult cut that it's going to do. And I got through those fairly fine. Of course, if I would have done a sliding motion, it would have cut through easier. And let's see how well this cuts through this way. Very, very easily, very well. Let's try a press cut with that tip. A lot of people cut with a Tanto like that when they're just using the tip of the blade. And as you can see, this is 550 paracord with those 7 strands. Let's try some wire. This is a USB cable, a flat version. Cuts through that super easily. Let's try this banding. This is 1-inch wide banding. Slides through that very easily. No problems at all. Very good. Let's see how well it cuts paper. Again, we'll be using this one because it's a little bit heavier, thicker. It'll do the worst job. It doesn't have a belly. So just a push cut here. The paper's not held up over there. That's why it's doing that. And to prove to you that, yes, it does work better with this knife. Look at that. So if you really like Tantos, Ganzo doesn't have very many Tantos at all. The 714 is a really good buy. I think it's a great knife for the price. It comes in very economically. And the 714-2, if you like hollow grinds and you don't want a Tanto, this is your choice for that as well. If you like this video, even if you don't want the knife, please click on that thumbs up and give it a like. Share with your friends and comment. But remember to subscribe and hit that bell because I've got some giveaways coming up. And the last thing that I want to tell you guys is cut towards your chum and not your thumb.